Everyone, we'll be turning that volume down. I'm loud as it is. We will be at ease. We are waiting right now on a quorum. Pam is here, so we are one away from a quorum. We have two or three that are hung up in other committee meetings, so we will get started as soon as we have a quorum. Thank you for your patience. Uh, apparently I was okay. All right, I'm gonna call Juvenile Justice to order at this point. Note that we have a quorum. We have for those who out in the audience, House Bill 259 is off. So it was down for a hearing only. That is being struck from the agenda. The first bill that we're going to hear is from Chairman Nimmer, House Bill 927. Chairman Nimmer. Table's fine.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be before you and present for your consideration House Bill 927. I do want to reference, as always, the LC number to make sure that everybody's on the right tracking sheet. LC 337322. We're
that
all
is
good
correct.
there?
Yep.
All right, great. This this bill came before me kind of came out of, like a lot of bills do, a lot of conversations with a lot of people and different families who have gone through a relative care situation or a foster care situation and have found themselves in somewhat of a struggle in times, not due to lack of concern for any agency employees, but just maybe prioritizing what they need to be working on at the time, have found themselves struggling to get information. And if you can imagine, as I'm sure you do in the situations that you guys handle in here, information dealing with educational, financial, emotional, physical, and such needs are very important when a child comes into care, whether that's an infant up to the age aging out in the system, if you will. Every child brings a certain set of circumstances that may follow him or her. And we want to make sure that the parents giving care at this time or the individual giving care to that child has every bit of information possible to make sure they resource care to that child in the best way possible. So you can read through it, as I'm sure you have. It just talks very plainly about the type of information that is needed. I've worked with Miss Melissa Carter and Ashley Groom. Ashley's with McGuire Woods and Melissa's with Emory, as well as the Department of Family and Children Services on this piece of legislation. And I would, Madam Chair, obviously this is your committee to run. I'd be open to take any questions, but I do have one change I would like to propose to the committee at the appropriate time.
Okay. If you'll just kind of briefly, I'm sorry, I picked up a lot of bad and good habits from Chairman Golick, being on judicial non-civil for so long. So if you would just kind of walk us through the bill and just kind of tell us briefly what it does.
Sure. So in line 22 and 23, we tried to make sure we covered all families that are given care that are in a system. If you'll see the caregiver being a foster parent, pre-adoptive, relative, providing care for such child with the following information, and that is who the information is going to. It's not going out to any John Doe on the street. It's going to people who are providing care, opening their home to a child that is in under state care at this time. Over in line 27, you'll see where it talks about a copy of the recommendation from the child's most recent physical and dental examinations. To kind of tell you, Madam Chair and committee, I've talked to a couple of families in my district. They have come to me, as I'm sure you all have heard concerns in the past. You get a child in, and that child doesn't really have the best communication skills with what they have seen in their past, whatever that past may have rendered itself to them. And so that child doesn't know whether to tell this new caregiver, hey, I've got a dental issue going on and I need to get some care given to me. I need to go to my dentist or or here's a physical situation I may have. Copy of recommendation down on line 30 of the child's most recent developmental assessment, trauma assessment, and psychological evaluation. Lines 30 and 31 are very important. We're talking about children, and in the state of Georgia, somewhere between 13 and 14,000 children that are in the state's care. We have around 8,000 employees under the DFAC system. Now, all those employees aren't giving care to children and caseworkers, but in the system as a whole. So you got a lot of people working to administer care to a lot of children. Lines 30 and 31, the assessment process and the most recent assessment, if you will, of trauma and psychological evaluations. Someone willing to open their home and take a kid in needs to know what they're getting. More importantly, that child deserves the best care possible. If that child has had some kind of mental or some traumatic experience in his or her life, the caregiver opening their home needs the same respect as that child does at this time to both give and receive that care. Coming on down, I'll just walk you through the balance of it. A copy of any court scheduling order or the dates and times of any scheduled hearings related to the child. That is, I think, a lot of times an oversight. It seems like it would be very normal, if you will, for somebody opening their home to know when the court hearings for that child, for a judge to review, along with everybody involved, the case plan around a kid. But a lot of times foster parents open their homes, or relative caregivers open their home, or pre-adoptive parents, and they don't know when the court cases are going on. And I think it's just a skip, if you will, in communication. We just want to make sure that everybody's communicating and that the people opening their home know what to expect. Health insurance information for the child, very basic. But again, it is a key piece of information that a lot of people that are willing to open their homes and have opened their homes don't know what comes with the kid at this point. At the time of placement, down in line 37, an explanation of the process for enrolling the child in school and any information necessary to complete the process, a description of the financial assistance for which the caregiver, foster parent, pre-adoptive parent, or relative may be eligible for, including any financial assistance for the child. Again, I don't believe we have people just gaming a system based on the backs of children. I'm a glass half full guy. But when people open their home, we got a lot of loving families that they don't need to incur an extra financial burden. They need to know what comes along with that kid from state and federal dollars to go along with covering the cost of that child. They need to understand how to enroll that child in school. They need to understand what school they are allowed to go to, how that process works, how to handle getting that kid in as normal a routine as possible. Madam Chair, that is basically the bill. Really just a common sense piece of legislation to move forward. And I would note that it's already in the DFAC's policy handbook for this information to be out, but it's not in our code. And we just want to, with the amount of employees that they have, and as Director Pryor and her team administers leadership down, we want to make sure that we've got some teeth in this policy, that this stuff is going out to the parents opening their home. And Madam Chair, at the end of the day, the two things I want to do is make it more accessible for people to open their homes where they have some definitive guidelines of knowing what they're getting into. And I want to make sure that kids have the best care possible when they go. And I'm sure that's the will and intent of this committee and the people behind me.
Thank you, Chairman Nimmer. Members of the committee, does anybody have any questions? Who's 12? Pam? Yeah. Representative Dickerson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. When you're giving out this information, are you also giving out any, like prescription, should they get that too, medication?
Yeah,
that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Representative, that will come along under your, up here, when you get dental and physical evaluations, examinations under 27 and 28, and down to 30 and 31 with the developmental assessment, trauma assessment, any kind of medications that's going along with anything that may have occurred or they're in the middle of dealing with, that'll come along with that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
I kind of
ma'am.
missed that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Spencer, do you have a question? Yours keeps going on and off.
Light doesn't come on.
So,
So
okay. Representative Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this information does not come to the foster parent before they accept. It's just after they accept or when the placement has happened.
After, so that's a good question. I appreciate you bringing it up. If you'll draw your attention down to line 25, it says at the time of placement, if available, but no later than, and the
Okay.
proposal you have in front of you is 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And at the appropriate time, I spoke with the chair lady before the meeting, and I would like to move that we change that at the appropriate time. But it's not before unless it's available.
Okay. I have one more. I don't know, just from my experience as a medical provider in the clinical setting, oftentimes when I have a foster child in front of me, I don't have this information. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes I am handicapped in making decisions for a foster child medically. So I don't know if this doesn't address that, but that's something probably we ought to look into as well.
Madam Chair, may I?
Sure.
Representative, that's a great point. And I think by getting this information in the hands of the caregiver, when they come to you for care,
Mm-hmm.
they'll normally have that. They should have that. But
Right.
I agree with
And
you.
many
Maybe that's
times they
something we
don't
need-
have it.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
something we need to
Yeah.
look at going forward.
Mhm.
Great point.
Thank you, Representative Spencer. Representative?
My mic's working.
Yep,
Yeah,
it is.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing this. I have a question about the psychological evaluation piece on page 31. I certainly think these caregivers and foster parents need this information, but I know that psychological evaluations are not always easy to follow, and I think there could be some assumptions made by these caregivers that aren't correct about what's going on with a child psychologically. Does anybody sit down and go over this with them, or did I miss that and you said that?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm sorry. Great question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
So currently, when a child comes into care, a caseworker from DFACS comes and sits down with the person opening their home, whomever, whatever category they fall under, and they would walk through any information given. They would walk through it with them. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Chandler. Any other questions for the author? All right, thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who'd wish to speak to the bill? If there's nobody wanting to speak I'm sorry, Representative Oliver.
I wish to make a motion at the pleasure of the chair.
So I will recognize Representative Oliver for the purposes of making a motion.
I move do pass to 927.
There is a motion do pass. Is there a second? There is a second from Representative Spencer. Do you have a question, Representative Spencer?
At the appropriate time, Madam Chair, I'd
Okay.
like to make a friendly amendment
Okay.
to the bill on line 30.
Okay, there has been a motion and a second on a do pass. I will open the floor for amendments. Representative Spencer.
On line 30, it states a copy of or recommendations. I don't think we need the word or, so
Okay.
it should be copy of recommendations.
So we'll strike or at line 30. That will be Amendment 1. Is there a motion?
That's the motion.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a second? Second? So we are voting. I'm sorry.
We don't need the or.
Andy, what number are you? I'm sorry. Representative
Should we
Welch.
have the or, I guess?
Okay. Okay. I think grammatically it's clumsy, but
Yeah.
I do think that it's necessary. So, do you withdraw your motion, Representative Spencer?
I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. That has been withdrawn. Oh, yes, Chairman Welch.
Thank you, Chairman. The question I had was dealing with the pre-adoption. A lot of information is going to be given out about the child pre-adoption. I understand with a foster parent and a caregiver that's already basically taking on responsibility for the child. Explain to me in the pre-adoptive state, it's possible that they would not. Is adoption concluded, or is it before the adoption is finalized, and this a parent could back out, a prospective parent could back out, in which case they would have information about this child and not actually take over the parental responsibilities. And that just gives me pause.
Okay.
Chairman Nimmer, would you like to address those concerns of
Yes,
Chairman Welch?
I think Chairman Welch, if you look down at line 25, it gives you the answer there at the time of placement, if available. And so for a pre-adoptive case, that would be at the time the adoption is happening or within the time frame that is said there in that line, which I seek to change at the appropriate time. Currently, it says 30 days. So the way I read the writing of this piece of legislation, that pre-adoptive parent or parents would be given that information at the time of that process, which in this case would be the placement on line 25.
And if they do not adopt, what happens to the information they've been provided?
I would expect at that point that the caseworker administering care or the oversight of that child would retrieve those papers back, whatever had been given.
I think, just for clarification, Chairman Welch, I think we'd be facing that same dilemma if it were a foster parent. If the child were placed elsewhere, we would still kind of be facing that same dilemma as far as what happens to that information. And, I think our smart folks at DFACS are smart enough to kind of cover that policy as far as that's concerned. Did you have any further questions, Chairman Welch? Representative Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to if we're still in the amendment
We are.
phase, I'd like the committee to consider having served as an interim foster parent for newborns and for toddlers and so forth. I do agree with the presenter. I would like to see that period of 30 days reduced, and would offer an amendment to on line 25 to strike the numeric 30 number 30 between then and days and replace it with the numeric number 15.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, so there is a motion to do pass on House Bill 927, LC 337322. How does the committee, all those in favor of passage of the bill, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chairman Nimmer. I appreciate the piece of legislation. It is moving forward with a recommendation of do pass. Thank you.
Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
I now recognize Chairman Dempsey for LC 906. Sure. Director Pryor's always welcome at Juvenile Justice. Just for everyone's clarification, we are talking about House Bill 906, LC 297804. Bless you. Chairman Dempsey.
Thank you so much. So this is the foster parents' right to privacy, actually. It extends to foster parents or former foster parents a protection that is already afforded to state employees. The privacy of primarily their home address and telephone number. There are other privacies listed on line 11 through 17. Protection of social security numbers, insurance or medical information, date of birth, credit card information, debit, but it is the same allowance that we as state employees have by expanding an exemption from disclosure in the Open Records Act. It removes a potential hurdle to recruiting foster parents at a time when there is a great need for recruiting and retaining quality caregivers for youth in our state. Protecting state employees' personal information has caused no problems to date with legitimate journalists seeking to report on operations at DFACS and the performance of foster parents in their capacity as caregivers. The public can gain access when it is necessary. Previous requests for this information, just a little background here, came when there was a request made for all foster parents' private information. It raised some concerns that this was something that had not been thought about, that someone might want to get the aggregate data that needs to be kept private, without a doubt, and to protect the child, the parents, and the former foster parent. It thought it was best to go ahead and address it at this time.
Okay.
That is the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Dempsey. Members of the committee, any questions? Seeing no questions, what is the will of the committee? There is a motion do pass from Chairman Cantrell. There's a second from Chairman Welch. Representative Cantrell. And Chairman Welch, there's all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Thank you. Chairman Dempsey, that passes. I appreciate it. Juvenile Justice is adjourned.